Hello, chess friends, and welcome to your out of chess channel, and welcome back to our Queen's Game decline studies. So in this studies, we have seen some great openings and great defenses after the first moves d4, d5, and c4. And today we're continuing with our Queen's Game decline studies and the so-called Janowski Variation. The Janowski Variation we have started recently. We have seen some very important strategic ideas and really beautiful tactical shots that are possible in the Janowski Variation of the Queen's Game decline. And today we'll study a different line. Today we'll analyze this early Queen to b3 move, this Queen to b3 method by White against the Janowski Variation. I think it's a very common approach, and I think we should really know what's going on the board, what are the tactical ideas of this opening. And the first game that I wanted to show you in this Queen to b3 method is a beautiful, sharp, tactical gameplay by the Stockfish engine against another top engine, Seer, in which Stockfish really dismantled, destroyed, really choked to death here, really this Janowski Variation with such a brutal method, with such a beautiful attack, with such a great positional play, but then afterwards with such an immortal Zugzwang. If you're familiar with this concept, Zugzwang, where when you don't have a good move, when every move that you make is such a bad move, really incredible performance again by the fish. Be prepared and watch how really Stockfish is dismantling here this Janowski Variation of the Queen's Game decline. So c4 was the first move by Stockfish. We have now the move e6 by Seer, but the game transposed now into the Queen's Game decline with a different move order, and now comes the Janowski move again with the move a6. And now, as recommended, we're playing now the exchange variation with the move c takes d5, e takes d5, and now comes this method Queen to b3, hitting the pawn on d5 directly. And what should we do here from Black's perspective? In my opinion, the best way here for Black is to go here with the move knight to f6, protecting everything. We'll come to this line in the later stage of our mini series about the Janowski Variation, but in this game here the move c6 was played by Seer, and this is maybe not the best of approaches here by Black, because you're not battling for the e4 square, because if you play knight to f6, then of course the e4 is covered, and there are now no opportunities for White to break and enter with this e4 move. But we'll come to this point, as I said, with the move knight to f6. We'll do this line also in a special video. So now, as we said, after move queen to b3, here c6 was played by the Seer engine, and now Stockfish breaks the position immediately with the move e4. We have here d takes e4, bishop to c4, hitting now the pawn on f7, queen to e7. Of course, you have to protect now your pawn on f7, and now in the continuation we have now the move a4, and this is now a must move for White, because White is controlling further the b5 square. The b5 has to be taken, because now Black of course cannot play the move b5 himself, because you get this one, a takes b5, c takes b5, and now you get bishop to b5. You cannot take, of course, with the a pawn, because your rook is hanging on the a file. So that's why very important to play this a4 move, controlling the further progress of Black here on the queen side. So that's why in the continuation Seer played the move knight to f6, but now very important move knight to e2, and then we're trying knight to g3. We're trying finally to take out the pawn on e4, because of course we played sort of a gambit line. We played e4, allowed Black to take, and now of course the e4 becomes our clear target in the continuation of the game. So we have now the move g6. Here the Seer engine is trying to develop the dark bishop. We have now a5, also very important move, controlling further the queen side. The queen side is now paralyzed by just one pawn move. Really wild stuff. So b5 or something is never a possibility, and what Stockfish is trying now to do is to get the knight on a4 and then to cement it really on the squares, the b6. So in the continuation, bishop to g7, and now comes knight to a4 immediately, controlling the b6 further. If Black, for instance, plays something like knight to d7 now, in order to maybe control the b6 square, now White has this beautiful move, bishop to d2, because now castling is not an opportunity. You get bishop to b4, and your queen is lined up on a dark square. Your rook is then also lined up on f8, so you lose the size of material. So that's why here the bishop to b4 preparation is of course something that bothers Black now in the continuation of the game. So that's why after move knight to a4, Black needs to be fast, has to castle, but now again comes the same idea, bishop to d2, with the idea to play bishop to b4. We have now rook to e8 by the Seer engine, bishop to b4, e4, hitting the queen, queen to c7, and now knight to b6 finally played by Stockfish, attacking now the rook on a8, and black has now to make a reaction here. So that's why rook to a7. Now we have kingside castling. We have bishop to e6, bishop takes e6, rook takes e6, and now after bishop to c5, the bishop is again lined up with the rook. The rook is a little bit loose here. It's weird how this rook is standing here now on a7. That's why rook to e8, first controlling also the knight, trying to get more pieces into the game, and now h3, not allowing this very important move by black. Black would love, of course, to play the move knight to g4 and break and enter with the move e3. That's why h3, a beautiful prophylactic move here by Stockfish. Here in the continuation, we have now bishop to f8 by the Seer engine, hitting the bishop on c5, and now queen to c4, controlling further the bishop. We have now bishop to c5, queen to c5, and of course now the problem is now you cannot kick away the queen with ideas of knight to d7 or something, because you get knight to d7, knight takes d7. Again, the rook would be hanging on a7. So here in the continuation, after move bishop to c5, queen takes c5, we have queen to d8, rook to e1, lining up now the rook against the pawn on e4, knight to h5, not allowing some moves like knight to g3. That's why here rook to d1 was played by Stockfish, getting the rooks on both of these very active files. Queen to f6, attacking now further the pawn on d5 and trying now maybe to get finally somehow the knight into the game, and then afterwards somehow really to get the rook into the game, maybe even try to trade off the queens with queen to f5 or something. But now really the fun starts. From this point on, pay good attention how Stockfish is brutalizing now this setup of black. So here Stockfish plays knight to c3, hits now the pawn twice on e4. You have to protect now the pawn on h4, but now comes a monster tactic, rook to e4, rook takes e4, knight takes e4, queen to e4, and now a beautiful move by Stockfish, queen to e5, forcing trades of queens. And it's a rare case that actually someone that is down a piece forces a trades of pieces, because you're up a knight, of course, a whole knight. You don't want here from white's perspective, you don't want to, of course, trade off more pieces because black is going into a favorable endgame. But actually it is working, because after queen to e5, d takes e5, notice that now the knight on b6 is really paralyzing all of the pieces of black. The black's knight cannot come on d7, pardon me. The rook cannot come on a8 also. We're threatening always a check here on d8, and there's nothing that can be done here in the continuation of the game. If you play something like king to g7, your knight is a little bit loose also with g4. It doesn't have good scores, but actually what we should do now is just to play rook to d8, and from this point on, it's a one-way ticket. Maybe you can play something like knight to f4, trying to search for opportunities for the knight, but now we pick up this knight. If you play knight to d5, you want, of course, to trade off the knights. Now we have this one, knight to c8, trapping the rook, and this should be very, very game over. Really pure paralysis here by White traded off here the pieces and is now paralyzing the knight, but also here this weird rook on a7, and after this move d takes e5, actually the Seer engine resigns. So this is really, I think, a good approach of White's, this queen to b3 method. It's really hard to defend this. There are lines knight to f6, there are lines even with the move b5. It is really hard to play against this method because e4 is coming for sure. It's a beautiful attacking flow, but in my opinion you have to play knight to f6, forcing this kind of a line, because after move knight to f6, White will eventually play the move bishop to g5, but it's now a different story. Now we can play c6, and if White continues now with the pressure with the move e4, then I think we can go d takes e4, and notice now the queen is now liberated on the d file and has opportunities to grab the pawn on d4. Now White has to play something like knight to e4, but it's weird because we'll simply pick up this one. We can also play bishop to e7, controlling everything. So it's not time here to take the pawn on e4. Now, in my opinion, White has to proceed here with the move bishop to c4, like in the previous example. But now I think Black can defend his position with queen to e7. And now again White has to play the move a4 in order to stop the b5 progress. But now I think with h6, bishop to f6, queen to f6, Black has simplified the game enough, and in my opinion this is now a different story. This is, in my opinion, defendable for Black. So in my opinion, this is the way to go against this queen to b3 method. First you play knight to f6, force maybe here your opponent to play bishop to g5, and then you play c6. If white continues now in a different way, if white continues in a normal setup, if white doesn't go aggressively with the move e4, then you have, I think, this decent setup. h6, we have now bishop to h4, bishop to e7, again playing solid games, and now after bishop to d3, knight to d7, normal development, knight to e2. Here maybe white is trying to go again into this positional line. We have talked about the positional line also in our Queen's Gambit decline studies, so please check out the Queen's Gambit decline positional line studies, how black played here from in a similar position, not the same, but with the same approach, with the same setup that black is trying to do. Now after something like kingside castling, and now we play b5. Again, this move b5 is very important, and in our previous video we have talked about also about this b5 method. Now we can play knight to b6, knight to c4, knight to e4, and simplify the game, occupying this very important squares in white's campaign. I think this is a solid game. So the engine gives here also equal chances now for both sides. So as I said, this queen to b3 method has to be met with knight to f6. But let's see now if black plays this passive move c6, is trying to defend the pawn on d5, then we play e4, then look at this, bishop to c4, now this flow is going on, look at this, a4, now the knight is coming on g3, look at this, bishop to d2, bishop to b4 was the preparation. So in my opinion, very a beautiful attack here by Stockfish 15. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the studies. I hope you apply some of these methods in your own game. If you want to see more about the Janowski variation and more about our Queen's Gambit decline studies, please check out our whole series. Here's the playlist. We have now more than 90 videos about the Queen's Gambit decline, with some other ideas like the Tarrasch defense, semi-Tarrasch defense, Chigorin defense, and many more. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.